This is the Techstart podcast. Tech professionals, remote workers, and entrepreneurs who are leaving the rat race and starting a new life in Southern Colorado. Now today's host, Ashley Arnold.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining our Upper Arc Tech Sector podcast. Today, we have Gwilda Wiyaka. Gwilda Wiyaka is the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Art School, for which she has written the text and curriculum. She is the creator of online shamanic classes for both children and adults designed to support spiritual evolution and personal empowerment through understanding and applying shamanic arts in daily life. Gwilda is also a preceptor for the University of Colorado School of Medicine, where she provides instruction to medical doctors on the modern interface between shamanism and allopathic medicine. In addition, Gwilda is the host of Mission Evolution radio show, which is broadcasted internationally through the X Zone Broadcasting Network, www.xzbn.net. Her past episodes can be found on www.missionevolution.org. Thank you so much for joining us today, Gwilda. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me, Ashley.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. We're very excited to interview you today because you are sitting in one of the most interesting seats of being a remote and digital worker, which is right in the spot between healthcare and wellness and technology. And we're just so pleased to have you working with us. It's our understanding you work out of Fremont County. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I'm on 48 acres and I'm off grid. So I have passive solar and active solar with batteries. So I'm not hooked into the grid, and sitting not too far from Coaldale, Colorado.
Very nice. If you wouldn't mind, would you tell us a little bit about yourself? What do you do and what your hobbies are?
Sure, I'd be glad to. I'm a shamanic practitioner and teacher. I certified through the state of Colorado, an occupational school of the shamanic arts for 15 years, ran it from in Boulder, Colorado, and in the Colorado, the Front Range area. And it was a brick and mortar school. I'm also an author and a singer-songwriter, and now I'm a radio show host and editor-in-chief. Basically, my absolute passion in life is empowering people. And early on when I started studying shamanism, I recognized that it seems like an ancient practice, and what does it have to do with today? But actually, it's a method for people to interface with the quantum level of life. And that's why it's been around for between 40 and 50,000 years, maybe even more, because it's still very, very viable. And now we're going through times of change. It's even more important. And so I developed a school around that, and a lot of my writings and teachings and that sort of thing. And that's been my passion.
And what about hobbies?
Hobbies. Well, I don't really have time for hobbies, but I do love to grow things. I have a dome greenhouse here on the property. Love to cook and do all those domestic things just because it's always been a passion of mine. I've done jewelry making. I don't really have much time for that anymore.
None of us do, right?
Yeah.
When you're into promoting these types of things, which you're promoting quite a bit, it's difficult to leave that personal time out. But I'd say, knowing you personally, you spend a fair amount of time doing a lot of meditation, a lot of exercises to make you powerful in your work. I'd say you do a tremendous amount of self-healing and healing for others in what I call the sanctuary where you live. So that's
I really
just my take on it.
Well, thank you. Yes, it's so helpful to be in a sanctuary where you can really align with the way life works, for this work in particular, because shamanism is an earth-based practice. And so I do spend time walking the land, that sort of thing, and meditating and really communing up here. It's a beautiful, beautiful area.
So let me ask you this. Why did you choose to make the move from the Boulder, Denver area to Fremont County in Coaldale?
Well, my heart has always been in the Rockies. I moved to Gunnison, actually, shortly after I married. I can't even tell you how many years ago, quite a few. And every time we drive through this area, I could just feel it pull my heart. And then we had to move to the Front Range, my prior husband and I, because he ended up with a job as an air traffic controller that was outside of Longmont. And so, that's where we kind of set up residence, and one thing led to the other, and I built my life there. But my heart has always been up in this area. Every time I drive through, we used to drive up on vacation to go back to Gunnison, and I could always feel that someday I'm going to belong there. Someday I'm going to live there.
And is it just the land, or is it the energy, or is it both? I mean, what is it that you feel here?
Well, if you want to talk astrology, there's supposed to be a place on the planet at any given time in your life, based on your horoscope, where you really belong. So it's an energetic match. And I've always felt that with this region. But I also love the beauty. I love the country. I love the Arkansas River. The only reason I don't live on the ocean is because I would miss the mountains more. And of all the mountains I could live in, I grew up overseas and I've been in Switzerland. This is the closest to my heart of any place I've ever been.
Oh, that's such a beautiful, absolutely beautiful sentiment. I couldn't agree with you more. There is definitely an energy around this area that definitely pulls us. So part of the reason we wanted to feature you with the Upper Ark Tech Sector and to get you involved is your business is basically completely 100% remote run. Is that true?
Yeah, I'm pretty remote.
Yeah, so you're doing everything technologically between the radio station and being an editor and also your work. You're able to basically run your school and your hosting and everything with the technology from your home, correct?
Yes, that's correct. I do the radio show, and it's an internationally broadcast radio show. It's syndicated. It's also um, terrestrial as well as internet, satellite, that sort of thing. So it covers a lot of areas and it's FCC regs cover it. It's not just a podcast.
Sure.
And therefore, the sound quality and everything is really, really strict. And I've still been able to manage it. We're looking at branching into TV, and we're still working a little bit without bandwidth because the main trunk serving this area got taken out by the spring fire recently, and everybody's having to reroute. So the connection isn't as wonderful, but I'm still able to broadcast the audio portion with no problem. I also am an author. I digitally produce my books from my desktop at home and run it through the internet. And then also the editing for the New Age Chronicles. It's all done from my home and done through the internet. My private practice, I'm a shamanic practitioner, and I have private clientele. And I work with them through either telephone or Skype through the internet. And that's very different than when I was on the Front Range, when I had a brick and mortar school and people came to my office and saw me there. And also the doctors, I saw them in person for my preceptor for the University of Colorado School of Medicine. But when it came go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead. You're fine.
Well, it came time, there was a time, and you'll probably remember it, when people were becoming less and less willing to take time from work and to travel someplace and to sit in a brick and mortar school to learn what they needed to learn for an alternative occupation or just for personal growth and development. And people were busy, and it was expensive to travel, and they were more inclined, the online courses started becoming popular. And at the same time, people started becoming accepting of online coaching, online counseling, that sort of thing. And it was at that point that I started to realize the face of this is changing. And then the more I thought about it, I thought, well, that means the face of my life can be changing too, because I've never been a city girl.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, we saved me for the born again city girl. I'm now a country girl, but I used to be a city girl. So I totally can relate to that. It's funny how technology has changed how we interact so much. And definitely with my own business, I never would have thought I'd be able to run it from Salida, Colorado. It's just completely different what you're able to accomplish. Being remote, so you don't have to give up the environment that you love and thrive in anymore to be able to do the work you have to do. And even more than that, I think due to the way life has played out and what technology has done to make things more efficient, I think it's fantastic that you can help people remotely. How magical is that you're able to do these sessions, which, folks, I got to tell you, I've been through a few sessions with Gwilda, and I've had the pleasure of doing them in person, but I've also done them on the phone, and it's absolutely magical that such a powerful teaching and wellness practice can even be transcribed through a telephone line or a Skype chat. It's absolutely magical. Would you spend a few minutes telling us how working in this fashion has maybe been able to expand your work, or has it limited you more?
No, it's amazing. I mean, sometime not too long ago, I was interviewing a gentleman from, he was in Tasmania, okay?
No kidding.
No kidding. And he was telling me he's an activist about the genocide that's going on in China for organ harvesting. I mean, things are opening up in ways, you can share information from remote sectors in ways that we never could before. My producer is in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. I'm up here in the mountains, and this gentleman is in Tasmania, and we're making a radio program that's broadcast internationally. That's a huge reach. And it's been the same with my private practice. I can talk to anybody, any place on the planet, and counsel and coach them and work shamanically with them, where before, if they had to come to my office, it was prohibitive.
So if you would spend a few minutes on that, have other, as far as the shamanic practice in general, have other professionals in your genre chosen to take your route, or do they still do a brick and mortar practice? And have you found more success doing this, what I would call, digitally, than you were able to grow before in the brick and mortar?
Well, I think, each practitioner, according to their skill set and their clientele and this sort of thing. I know a lot of the practitioners are, we're going international anyway with their teachings and this and that. They still do workshops nationally and do retreats and that sort of thing. And I do those as well. But I don't really know how many of them are getting more and more into the online teaching and the online private practice, as far as the shamanic treatment goes. But I think quite a few of them. I've certainly seen evidence of that. And it's funny because this being such an earth-based ancient practice, to be able to make that bridge. So like for this radio show, I've set an altar in my living room, right where I'm sitting from and visiting, and I always do when I'm going to broadcast or when I'm doing a private session for people. So I go through all the ritual and set up the space where I'm at and then extend that to where they're at. Shamanism is not bound by time or space, and that's really user-friendly for working on the internet.
That's so powerful. I have a question for you. And this is off topic a little bit, but it's a very powerful question. In doing what you do you believe time is linear?
Oh, absolutely not. No, there's all sorts of evidence that our concept of time is so very limited, and that we limit ourselves because of it. There's this wonderful formula that's been proven. It's a proven mathematical formula that says causality is equal parts past and future, but manifests in the present. That's not linear. Okay.
That's not linear at all.
No, and then and that speaks a lot about manifestation and how we can work it. But then within that, there's all these possible timelines based on our day-to-day decisions. Possible different outcomes based on our moment-to-moment, day-to-day decisions. That's not linear either.
It's not. And, it's so interesting that you say that. So many times when you think of working in technology, specifically trying to explain to an audience that's not from, and this is very interesting from an internet perspective or a technological perspective, trying to understand the concept of dimensionality in this arena in terms of what the technology enables us to do. For example, we work with a couple of companies. One's doing an identity management database who also believes that information is dimensional, and therefore, if information is dimensional, therefore time must be dimensional. So it's present, past, and future. We're also working. We see so much in data analytics where we realize that the past tells us a lot, but it cannot live without future data points. And I think for the first time in history, for quite some time, the math available to us, and I hate to bring math into it, but the math and the quantitative algorithms we use for the first time are telling us that it would be bad if we were to look at the world as if it was, so to speak, flat. And so now that we're trying to get a mass adoption and scalability, at least through technology and the internet, to the general norm of people, that, hey, there's dimensionality to you, and there are more sides to you than you're aware of, and there are more time points that you need to be aware of than just what happened 5 minutes ago or what's about to happen 2 minutes from now. Is such a magical time, and I think we're seeing that paradigm shift across all populations, and I'd be curious to see what you think about that.
That's such a wonderful point, Ashley, because we've been in slower moving times for millennium. And, we go through cycles as they go through the ages of the horoscope. Some are in higher frequency areas of the galaxy, because that's all the horoscope is a mapping of our relative positioning in the galaxy at any given time. That's what the Mayan calendar was built on. So when there's times when we're in slower moving times, and multiple generations are born within a particular energetic influence that is slow moving. But now we're coming into a very high moving time as we move into the age of Aquarius. Things are changing much more quickly. And what it used to take multiple generations to move through, frequency-wise, influence-wise, we're moving through in less than 17 days. So things are changing very quickly. And the beautiful thing about the math and technology is it's able to jump a bit ahead of that and give us a preview of what's opening up, because there are all sorts of alternatives that we haven't seen because we've been looking at a still shot rather than a moving picture. When you start to look at a movie versus a still shot, you can write any story around it you want. But when you get the motion involved, then all of a sudden it starts to take on a whole new dimension. That's what we're moving into, and that's what I think technology and algorithms are giving us a chance to get a preview and change our concepts so that we can participate. If we don't change our concepts, we're still going to be stuck on the flat earth.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. I absolutely could not. And it's always a struggle to you almost have to be, I always call it a worshiper or an evangelist of new technologies, especially in maintaining a wholesome life. And I think the old norm used to think that you couldn't be wholesome if you were completely tech oriented. And, if the upper arc tech sector has taught me anything about people, it's actually that we're seeing more multifaceted individuals being able to monetize technology in such magical ways to make life better and make the well-being of people better. And it's really the people that understand that we're in a different arena, in a different time, and that our perceptions are actually changing as we speak. And so being able to interview someone like you is just absolutely incredible, because you are at the forefront of that discussion, specifically with your practice in the shamanic arts and you taking this into such a dynamic ecosystem.
Well, it's just a wonderful provision, our electronics. I know that, they're misused, or people, they get addicted to games or this or that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about they're taking over the linear thought process, freeing up our creativity, our imagination, and our ability to manifest.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So let me ask you this. I know you kind of are wearing many hats because you're growing multiple businesses between the radio station and your work there, and then also your practice. How do you measure success?
Well, my idea of success is having a positive impact on change in the world and supporting people through these times. So that's how I measure it, no matter which way I come at it.
And how do you know if you're having a positive impact?
You just have to trust sometimes, because when I'm speaking on the radio, I feel like I'm sitting in my living room talking to one person like we're talking. But who all hears it? And what difference does it make for them? So like I said, before I do anything, I set up sacred space so that it's coming from a balanced place that's aligned with nature here where I'm at, and offer that back out into the world. And I think that that's what we've lost, is our connection to the way life works. And so that's what I'm trying to offer back. And I can just trust. But then I get lots of feedback, lots of emails, lots of people calling in and asking questions, and my numbers, my radio numbers, I'm like usually second or third in the entire broadcast network, which speaks of people. There's an audience. People are listening. People are listening to it, and hopefully getting new options.
So here, well, I couldn't agree more. And if you haven't listened to Miss Gwilda's radio station, you must. It's a must do. She interviews people from all walks of life, and it's just a very peaceful time when I take time out of my day to listen to her radio show. It really, really does. So please, everybody, tune in to Mission Evolution. Having said that, let me ask you what you consider your and this is going to be an easy question for you and a hard question for you. But what's your unique superpower that's helped in your success? Knowing that you are broadcasting out on many dimensions from a one-to-many group of people when it comes to healing and when it comes to just your radio show. But what's your superpower? What keeps you going?
I would have to say bridging people and information is my superpower. So like I'm able to bridge science and magic. Like I said, teach medical doctors about the interface between shamanism and allopathic medicine at the university level. That's bridging a big bridge, right? A big gap. And the times we're moving into are times of coming out of polarization and moving into unity. So that bridging is very important right now. I bridge people from very different viewpoints or walks of life so that we find that third option, that third wisdom that can lead us into a new way of being. So being a bridge and supporting people and empowering people that would be my superpower.
Very, very good. I think, being a bridge is an awesome thing to be right now. I couldn't agree more with you. And I like I said, I'm just so inspired by your work, and it's such a pleasure to have you here with us. I'd like to spend a few minutes on your decision again, one more time, to live up here in the Fremont County area and Coaldale area. Do you remember a point when you decided doing your work in the city that you just had enough? Or was this a move? Was the move up here to be more connected with your work, or was the move up here because you had enough of what we call sort of the rat race of the city, and you felt that your work would come out more here? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. My choice wasn't quite as reactionary as having had enough or wanting to get away from the rat race. Although I've always been more comfortable. I teach wilderness programs. I've always backpacked alone, or did. I'm getting a little old for that, but so my connection with the earth has always been paramount to me, to my balance and to my well-being. But working in the city, I can also create a little sanctuary around me, and I was doing okay with that. But there's one thing that I teach, and there's one thing that I follow, and that is set your intent and follow your promptings. And my promptings were leading me away from where I was into something totally new, even though I took what I was doing with me. So it was following my promptings to sell everything I had and to buy a fifth wheel and to move up into this area. So it was quite an adventure, particularly for a woman already, in her 60s, to do this. But it was just my promptings, and I don't look back. I've always followed my promptings, done the next thing and the next thing, and not look back.
So did you have any difficulties relocating, or were you just in sync with what you felt you needed to do?
Both. I had built that house myself that I was living in Berthoud in the Front Range, and I had built a little sanctuary around it. It was a small yard, but I put a lot of effort into a koi pond, and I planted every tree there and every rose bush in my garden and little chicken coop.
Koi pound?
A koi
cool.
Pond. Yeah, it was beautiful. Because one of the promptings that I got is I needed to build sanctuary around me in order to stay balanced, to do the work I do and still be in a city type area. And so I very, very much had a deep connection and love with the house itself, because I built it based on shamanic principles, and with the yard and all the living beings that relied on me there. And so selling all of that and leaving it, selling most of my possessions, was a bit difficult. It was certainly poignant, to say the least. And then moving from a decent sized house into a fifth wheel trailer, was definitely a shift for me. Although I've done camping out and this and that, it wasn't a challenge in that regard. But paring down to where everything that I had would fit into that and still run my business was a bit challenging. But I love this area so much. It was like, okay, you go through the process, you do the mourning, you say goodbye, and then here's the new birth. And this place is really good for new birth.
Oh, wow. So if that's not a reason to move here, I don't know what is. Gosh, that is a wonderful story. And it's my understanding that you built your new home, correct?
Yes, I, of course, did everything based on shamanic journey and the shamanic principles. But my son is in tile and interior design, interior floor covering. I had a degree in interior design, but I've also done blueprints and this sort of thing, and I've designed, this would be my third home. So I was able to design this home based on so I made it passive solar. And I worked with actually a lovely company there in Salida, Great Western Homes, because they prefab them, and that's actually a superior building as far as the structure goes, because it's done indoors, custom cut, I mean, precision cut out of the weather, and then transported on site. And so I worked with them to design the house just exactly like I wanted it, which has a passive, it's oriented so it's passive solar. It has a sunroom on the front to use the passive solar gain. Lots of glazing or windows, if you will, strategically placed according. And then stuccoed the outside, which makes it, I got this, and I also got the 6 foot, 2x6s instead of 2x4, so we have 6 inch of insulation. The house doesn't have
Sure.
AC, nor does it need it. In the winter, I have wood-burning stove and underfloor heat. That
I may or may not remember chopping cords of wood for you.
we had fun with that, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
I can still swing them all, by the way.
Ladies and gentlemen, she can, and she is a force to be reckoned with. So I can say that from personal experience.
So yeah, it was really fun designing the house, interior, exterior, the whole thing, and the plan for the entire land, where the solar array would go, where the greenhouse would go, where the septic would go, where the well was. I dowsed the well in a shamanic manner. The entire foundation of the house is built on the shamanic principles with stones set in to hold the directions, and it's amazingly sound.
So can you spend a few minutes explaining what that means? Because I just don't know. So when you say you set the stones in all the directions, like in corners of the house or outside, or what do you mean?
Well, I have medicine wheels that I've built outside of the house, and the whole point between working with the directions is, let me back up. We have an electromagnetic field that's around our body. It's generated by the heart. The earth has an electromagnetic field out around her that's generated by her spinning around her iron core. When we work with our physical or our electromagnetic field in alignment with the earth, we're empowered by the earth. When we work off kilter from that, we start to create drag. And that's a lot of health problems we have and everything else as a result of forgetting how to work with the way the earth itself works, even electromagnetically. So the shamanic way, if you will, is when I say I build an altar or I build a medicine wheel or I set the house up, what I'm doing is I'm working with the magnetic directions and orienting the house to the magnetic directions. And then through my intent, I'll take a stone, like I work with the basic colors. Yellow, red, black, and white for yellow is east, south is red, west is black, and north is white. That's just to help me set my intent. Well, I'll set each of those stones in the foundation forms. So I've done this for 3 houses.
Okay.
Before the foundation is poured, and so it kind of anchors those holding points, if you will, so that the house itself is aligned with the earth and connected to it. It's amazing. The structures seem to be sounder. It's much easier to hold sacred space in them. So it's a skill that we've forgotten, but every tradition had it.
Sure. Now, let me ask you this, because this is something I struggle with a little bit in understanding. I know we've touched on it a couple times, but does technology interfere with your practice at all, from the bandwidth, the noise of the wavelengths, etc.? Or are you able to block them out? Does it ever impugn your ability to practice, or is it just a tool?
Well, I know a lot of people are pretty sensitive to electromagnetic interference, and there was a time when I was. I remember one time my former husband was an air traffic controller, and he took me on tour. He took me to the basement of the FAA's facility where all these old-time computers were, and I just about lost consciousness. It was so intense. But since then, I've
I'd
been
love to see that.
it was amazing to see. But the more I work with the way life works, the more aligned I am with the earth and her magnetic field, the less other magnetic interference bothers me, because I'm aligned with the big mother, if you will. Okay. And they just aren't
Sure.
bigger than that. I find actually, if I'm not careful, I interfere more with electronics than they do with me.
Oh, you're the one that just breaks everything, right? They just turn off.
Exactly, yeah. But I've been able to, again, to set my intent and to set up space so that we don't interfere with each other, if you will. I just find
Well,
them,
no,
yeah.
that's fantastic, because we hear a lot about sometimes, especially when somebody's working remote, some of the diagnoses, they're not hard to generalize, right? Isolation, not really feeling individualistic, being absorbed in your work, that kind of thing, not coming up for air or connecting with the universe. I think if anything that we found, at least with the Upper Arc Tech Group in Fremont County and Chaffey County, is we've definitely found individuals who've been able to strike that balance. But the burnout happens. It really does happen from working on computers and working with them. And it sounds like you've really made a way to make that balance work, where you've been able to maintain your principles and use the technology as a tool, but not let it interfere with your own so to speak, electromagnetic field, which is so important. I think I was in Oregon last week, and I had the pleasure to go, and I remember standing in front of waterfalls and standing in front of positive ions, and I couldn't stop staring because my eyes were so tired from the computer. But it sounds like it's possible, if you're open to it, to be able to heal working in a computer and working in technology, kind of, some of the side effects. It's possible to heal through your own energy. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that's really fair, because what in this area really helps with that. Because think of it, you're in the city, you're on concrete, you're not connected with the planet. You can't, literally, we need to ground electromagnetically. We need to be able to ground, to rebalance. So we're in the city, maybe we're in a high rise, we're sitting in front of our computer, we've got Wi-Fi going, we've got the electrical current running through the house, for lights and this and that, and probably we have those things that you go lights on and everything turns on. I mean, so basically what we're really, really doing is insulating ourselves with artificial electromagnetic frequencies. But we don't have any place to gas off, if you will. Here, I sit and work on my computer for hours, but then bless my dog's heart, she needs to go outside. So I get up and I go walk on the earth, breathe the fresh air. I'm real close to the ark. I can actually even hear it running sometimes. 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 4 times a day. Rebalances me, and I can go back to the computer with no burnout whatsoever. And so I think that living in this area, working with this area, if you just take a little bit of time for the provisions that nature provides, it counteracts all that. You rebalance with the frequency of the earth, and then you can go back to what you're doing.
It truly does. It truly does. So let me ask you this: in terms of sharing with our listeners, what would you tell them is the most magical part about being up here, and not being in the city? In terms of, is it I know we've touched on your ability to free think and your ability to get up and go away, but in your particular case, you can build a sanctuary anywhere because you're a very powerful shamanic practitioner. So being that you can block out almost anything, what's your favorite, most compelling reason to be here?
Well, there's a whole bunch of them. I'm trying to figure out my favorite. I built my house in such a way, even the colors inside, the materials, its hard surface, travertine, this sort of thing, to where there's really no separation visually or energetically between inside and outside. So it's like I'm sitting in a protected area, but it's like I'm sitting out in the forest. And to step outside at night with no light pollution and look up and see the stars, and it really recalibrates, how important are we here? How important was that little problem I was contemplating today in the face of all of this? I think holding perspective is the most beautiful thing that this area does.
Wow. That is so, that's so poignantly said. I couldn't have even tried to say it in such a manner. I feel the same way, but I would struggle to say that so eloquently. Thank you. So now that you've settled in, what's your life now like? What are you most excited about?
Well, one of the things I love is well, one of the things I dislike is an alarm clock. Okay. And
Right?
not only aligning with the Earth's electromagnetic frequency, but aligning with her cycles. So my bedroom has a east-facing window. I wake up with the light, or I set my intent to wake up before the light if it's winter time. And then as the sun moves its way across the house in the evening, I can sit out on the sun porch and watch the sun set, and it keeps me so totally oriented with the place here. One of the things my original teacher taught me, he says, stand in the center of your circle. It took me a while to figure out what he meant by that. But basically, know what's around you, align with what's around you, commune with what's around you, and get in sync with where you are on the planet. And being able to stay in one place, but out in nature, like I've been able to do here for the past, 5 years I've been up here, 3 since I've been in the house, is to be in the center of my circle, in the center of this land, and align myself accordingly. My inspiration comes from there. My solace comes from there. My health is amazing because of it. So that's what I'm the most excited about, is we each, no matter where we stand, need to be present there, because then we're putting out the frequency or amplifying the frequency that everybody else needs for balance.
Wow, that's absolutely beautiful. And this area really does help you get balanced. I will say that. I've been here 4 years, and I just look at what my life used to be about compared to what it's about now, and I have to say, I have come to the same realization. If I want to innovate for my company or inspire others, I may be in a bad mood for a couple hours, but I go outside and ground my feet, and I'm able to just come back into my soul and be who I'm supposed to be and accomplish what I'm here to do. And this area has helped me realize that as well. So it's just a powerful area, and it's so good to know that there are individuals such as yourself out here to making a difference and using technology to spread the message, especially to lead a wholesome life and to incorporate nature into it. And what better location than in Fremont County and along the Upper Arkansas Valley? It's just absolutely incredible. Lastly, how do you see this region transforming because of our tech leadership arrangement, our partnership? How do you see more people coming up here? Do you see a boom in technology, or do you see more holistic services being offered, or people being able to work more clearly if they move to the region?
Yes, I really do. I mean, like we've been talking for the past 45 minutes, to me, being able to be in this area, it's just where the waters begin, This
Right.
is the continental divide. This is the beginning of it all. And our influence goes downhill with water. And if we can stay balanced, we're sending that out. But there are difficulties that you have to really be willing to overcome. For one, if you're going to be, when you're in the city and you're working technologically, it's taken care of for you, right?
Right.
If you're up here, you have to figure out some workarounds sometimes.
Sure.
Like I had to become very, very tech savvy about, okay, well, if I'm going to be broadcasting, but I'm also going to be filming because it's for TV, my ports where I put my camera and the one where I put my headset have to be the same speed ports. What's a port, So I had to learn all of this stuff, where when you're in town, you have more techie people working for you, and the connection speed is not an issue, and so you don't have to be so mindful of bandwidth. You can kind of relax into it and not have to worry so much about it. But when you're up here, you really need to take a lot more initiative and responsibility. I find it well worth the extra work, and I find it fascinating because I'm kind of like you. I like techie stuff. Sounds strange for a shaman, but but you really have to be more independent and learn more about your equipment and make sure you have the right equipment for the job to compensate for the fact that we don't have as direct cable hookup. We don't have the fiber optic capabilities in a lot of the places that we are. So what's going to work? Well, satellite's not going to work if you work through Skype, just because of the way it works. You have to learn all
Right.
those things and set yourself up accordingly, rather than just assume that it's always going to be there. Because
so you need a little bit of a self-taught ingenuity, so to speak,
yes,
in the interim.
Pre-planning. It's about the pre-planning.
It's about the pre-planning, folks. That's what you need. You got to do the pre-planning. No fly-by-nights here. Just kidding. All right, Gwilda. Well, listen, we are so pleased to have you on our podcast, and I can't tell you how much value you will be bringing to this community. If you wouldn't mind, can you tell our audience how they can find you as both your counterparts? First, as a shamanic practitioner, how can they reach you? And secondly, how can they tune into your radio station?
Great. So as a shamanic practitioner, you can find me at findyourpathhome.com. That's findyourpathhome.com. Or if you need to call for an appointment, 303-775-3431. The radio station is Mission Evolution Radio, and you can listen to all my past archives on missionevolution.org, or you can tune in to me live on xzbn.net. That's the X Zone Broadcast Network. And I'm just about to start a new radio program called Empowered Woman, so I'm real excited about that too. So that'll be available on any of my websites where to hook into that when the time comes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being with us, Gwilda. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ashley. It's been my pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Techstart podcast. Find out more at techstart.fremontedc.com.